I'm Jordan Poole from the University of Michigan Basketball. You are watching TR Sports. Please enjoy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TR Sports. I'm your host, Toby. And oh man, we got a packed episode again today. Last episode was 54 minutes, which was really long, but there's a lot of news to cover, as I found out when you're gone for 4 months. But we're back. We got a good lineup today. We're gonna start out with an NBA check-in. We're gonna look at the top 5 teams in the East, top 5 teams in the West, and we're just gonna go down the list and talk about them. Not a list or anything. Next, after that, we're gonna be talking about the NFL divisional round. I'm going to be making my picks yet again, like we did last week with the wild card. And then after that, we're going to talk about 3 more MLB offseason moves. And then after that, we are going to look at what I did wrong in the wild card playoffs and why I had a 0% winning percentage. I'm going to defend my picks, but I'm also going to give them some cases of why I did it. After that, to end out the podcast, we have another great interview with Texas Rangers Fanatics, another fan page. He's got 10,000 followers on Instagram, and it was great to have him on. It was a great interview. We talked about the Rangers, talked about their future, talked about their farm system, talked about their players, we talked about everything. It was great. So that is going to end out the podcast. So it's a great lineup today. I worked hard on it. Of course, I can't stuff everything in this podcast because there's just too much stuff that we missed and a lot that happened this week. There's a lot. Like Tua declared for the draft. The Rays made a big move, traded their top prospect for not that much. I don't really like the trade. I think the Rays won it, but we really don't have time to talk about those little moves in this podcast. So I'm just trying to stuff everything in here. So without further ado, let's jump into our first story, and that first story is the NBA check-in. So right now on your screen is the top 5 teams in the Eastern Conference. This NBA season has been a whirlwind for most teams, I think. For me especially, the Sixers have been so inconsistent, and there's so much happening with them that it's stressful, but it's also like we're confused of who's going to win the championship. Is it going to be a team like the Sixers? Is it going to be the Bucks? Is it going to be the Lakers? Is it going to be the Clippers? Because everyone looks so inconsistent except for the Lakers. Okay, so number 1 team in the Eastern Conference is the Milwaukee Bucks. Great team. Giannis is really the rock for that team. Whenever I see the Milwaukee Bucks play, they always look like a bunch of players the Sixers tried to get but failed. Guys like Wesley Matthews, George Hill, all those guys are guys that the Sixers should have gone out and got, and even in some cases tried to get, but ultimately failed, and then the Bucks got them and built around Giannis, similar to the way the Sixers tried to build around Embiid, but for some reason the Bucks are having more success, and they have 34 wins and 6 losses, and they're 8-2 in their last 10 games, which is crazy. They're a really good team. I think their weakness is when Giannis doesn't play well. We saw it on Christmas Day with the Sixers. The Sixers absolutely clobbered the Bucks in that game. They hit a lot of threes. Giannis didn't play well, and that's what I'm worried is going to be the downfall of this Milwaukee Bucks team, is that when Giannis is not playing well, who's going to step up? A guy like Chris Middleton doesn't really do that. It begs the question if they need another piece, but I don't think they're actually going to go out and get one when they have 34 wins. Number 2 seed is the Miami Heat. This team is really entertaining to watch. I think I've said it multiple times last episode. Bam Adebayo's having an absolute breakout year. He's on my fantasy team too, and I can tell you he puts up some nice fantasy numbers every night. But he's killing it. Jimmy Butler's doing his thing again. They're dominating right now, and they're a really tough team to beat. They have a strong core. Tyler Herro is a great rookie. I think I probably said this in one of my podcasts. That's who I wanted to go to the Sixers, and it didn't work out like that. He went up much higher than I thought he was going to go, but he's killing it on the Heat, and the Sixers got Matisse Thybulle, so it's okay. But the Heat really do have potential to maybe make a finals run. which is much more than I expected out of them this season, much more than most people expected out of them. They're doing great. Number 3 seed is the Boston Celtics. What is there to say? It's a strange lineup. Very small ball at times. Kemba Walker's absolutely killing it, doing much better than Kyrie did, and luckily the fans like him much better than Kyrie did. I mean, much better than they liked Kyrie. And, there's not much to say about this team other than they're still consistently going out there and winning. And they're consistently good. Jaylen Brown's having the best year of his career. Jason Tatum still hasn't broken out. I'm very happy that Jason Tatum hype died down, and that's just because it wasn't going to happen. It still hasn't happened, and I'm waiting for it to happen, and quite frankly, I don't think it's going to happen. Has Jason Tatum peaked? I don't think so, but will he become a bona fide superstar? Definitely not. Number 4, the Toronto Raptors. They are 25-13, 8 games back, and have a 5-5 record in the last 10 games. The Raptors. Pascal Siakam is a beast. Of course, they won the NBA championship last year, but their star Kawhi Leonard left for the Clippers. So now they're in a weird position of, should we compete with Pascal? Do we have enough to compete? And they definitely do have enough to compete with 25-13 record. I'm really curious to see what this team does in the playoffs, because there's a big question mark for me of what they're capable of. And that's just because they lose Kawhi. Is Pascal really going to lead a team to a championship anytime soon? I don't know. I think they're going to go out and get another piece eventually. I really hope they don't trade Marc Gasol to the Celtics, because then the Celtics will have a big man in the post to stop a guy like Al Horford or Joel Embiid. So I hope the Raptors keep winning. Finally, my team, number 5. We have already spoken a lot about them. Very inconsistent. Gone on multiple losing streaks and multiple winning streaks. Al Horford is getting his chance to shine now that Embiid is out for probably, we know it's 1 to 2 weeks reevaluation time, so I'm going to say we know it's 1 week plus, but it's really probably, in my estimation, going to be about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, something like that. So that's going to be an issue for the Sixers, but I do believe they can keep winning because they have Al Horford. This is the reason why they go out and get him, was because Al Horford could step up when Embiid goes down like this. So Sixers, inconsistent, not that happy with them right now, but of course we did a segment last week, so we don't have to ramble on about that. So, Western Conference standings. Top 5 teams are the Lakers, Nuggets, Clippers, Jazz, and Rockets. Okay, so let's talk about the Lakers. They're dominant. There's nothing else to say. Everyone freaks out when Anthony Davis goes down earlier this week, and they did absolutely fine. Beat Luka Doncic, and the Mavs beat everybody. They don't lose, and I think it's because of LeBron and AD, and that's pretty clear. Alex Caruso has been balling this year too. Surprisingly, he's not even bad. He's really good, and so the team, LeBron and Anthony Davis, and that's why they're winning. And I'm sure they have plenty of momentum in that locker room. I think their coach, who I'm blanking out on for some reason right now, but I think he's done a great job, much better than I expected. So good things happening in LA. Great things to come. So number 2 seed are the Nuggets, 26 wins, 11 losses, 4.5 games back, and they're 7-3 over the last 10 games. I really haven't watched a lot of the Nuggets this year. I know Nikola Jokic has struggled at times. He looked overweight. He looked overmatched, and I think, he lost some of that weight apparently, and he's starting to come back into form. But he's definitely not the best center in the league. I believe if you go back to episode 5 of the podcast, not episode 5. I think it's episode 6 or 4. I do an epic rant about why I'm upset that Nikola Jokic made All-NBA first team over Joel Embiid. He shouldn't have, but I think I haven't proven anything, but I think Nikola Jokic has proven that, and Embiid has proven too, that Embiid's the better center this season, and he really does look much better than Nikola Jokic so far this year. But the Nuggets are still winning. I can't tell you how. They always somehow do it. Is it the coaching? Is it the culture? Is it the players? I'm not sure. Number 3 is the Clippers. They really should be number 2. The only reason they're not number 2 is because Kawhi sits out a lot. He's got a lot of load management, and it's not a big issue for the Clippers, really, because they want to get him set for the playoffs. I still believe the Clippers are going to make an epic run at the NBA Finals, and I think it's going to come down again to that Lakers-Clippers matchup at some point to decide, who goes to the Finals. Number 4 seed are the Jazz. They got Mike Conley, who I really believe has been struggling this season, has not done what they expected out of him, but apparently that doesn't matter because Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert combo are apparently insane. Again, haven't watched a lot of Jazz games, haven't watched actually that many games in this Western Conference now that I'm looking at it. But Rudy Gobert's like a stud. He's still doing what he was doing last year. Donovan Mitchell is always a guarantee for 20 points. Mike Conley's definitely there to help. And you have a bunch of good pieces around that team, which really helps out. Now, number 5 are the Houston Rockets. Russell Westbrook and James Harden haven't exactly clicked yet. I think it's going to come soon. But you got to give them some time because there are 2 stars figuring out how to share the ball together, which is very difficult. People have them very high. I was medium on them. I thought they could have done really well, or they could have done really badly. And they're right in the middle like I thought they would be. But, I mean, these 10 teams that we looked at are both very good. And the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference, it is shaping up to be a great race on both sides. And I'm really excited for the NBA Finals this year. Next up on the podcast, we are going to make our NFL divisional round predictions. And hopefully we can get some right this time, right here on TR Sports. And we are back with our bracket here. We have a bunch of teams: the Titans, Ravens, Texans, Chiefs, Vikings, 49ers, Seahawks, and Packers. That line of 8 teams, we are going to be picking our winners of each divisional game. Last week, we did the same thing with the wild card, and we even picked our Super Bowl winner. As you can see, the Saints lost in the wild card game, so they are not going to win the Super Bowl. What a terrible week for me, because I was an Eagles fan. We played terribly, but that's not really our fault because our quarterback goes down. Josh McCown tried his best. I love the guy. But terrible. Every team I picked lost. So let's really hope I'm not the kiss of death here. We'll see. I might be, because at this point, I mean, every team, I was pretty sure on 3 of my picks last week, but none of them won. So, we're talking about that later in the podcast. So let's just talk about each divisional game. We're going to start with the Titans and Ravens. Titans beat the Patriots. Barely. I had the Patriots beating the Titans, of course, because I got every game wrong, but whatever. So, Titans barely beat the Patriots. They didn't look good while doing it. It was an ugly game. It was like 14-14, and the Titans won somehow. I don't have the scores in front of me, but Ryan Tannehill played fine. Derrick Henry absolutely demolished that Patriots defense. Mike Vrabel had a good game. Mike Vrabel is the coach. Coached a good game and didn't outcoach Belichick, but I think Belichick undercoached. So I think this one's quite easy because they're playing the Baltimore Ravens, who have been on a tear. Lamar Jackson's crazy. Of course, they haven't played in a little while, but again, Mark Ingram is also great running back. Their defense is great. Their coach is great, Jim Harbaugh. Why wouldn't I pick the Ravens here? There's no reason why not, so we're going to pick the Ravens. Next is the Texans versus Chiefs. And I'm going to try to make an underdog pick this week. I want to pick one team that will beat, one team that will beat the team that I think might win. And I think that's going to be this pick. I'm going to have the Texans beating the Chiefs. The Chiefs aren't overmatched by any means. This should be a good game. It could be a terrible game because at this point, after last week, I don't know what to expect from the Texans. They're really bad, but they're really good at the same time. And J.J. Watt looked dominant. They have a good defense. Bill O'Brien's a terrible coach, but maybe they can do something special in this game. So I don't think this is my underdog pick. I think the Texans are going to beat the Chiefs, but it should be a good game. But I could be wrong. I want to make an underdog pick because we didn't really do that last week, and it didn't work out well. So 49ers versus Vikings. This should be another good game, but it's still coming down to the point where I think, you know what, maybe the Vikings could beat the 49ers. Maybe that should be my underdog pick for this divisional round playoff, but I just don't see it happening. I don't trust Kirk Cousins enough. Yes, he played brilliantly against the team that I thought was literally going to win the Super Bowl, but I don't trust him. If he wins this week, and if they beat the 49ers, I will pick the Vikings to win next week. I believe whoever wins this game is going to go to the Super Bowl because this Seahawks-Packers game is those. Oh, my bad. I picked the wrong team. Whatever. I'll fix that. But the Seahawks-Packers game is not. It's not. The teams aren't good enough to win the Super Bowl. I don't think they're good enough to get to the Super Bowl. So I believe whoever's going to win this Vikings-49ers game is going to the Super Bowl. So I don't trust Kirk Cousins enough. The Vikings looked really good last week, but the 49ers have looked really good all season. I have to pick the 49ers. I don't trust Kirk Cousins yet. Again, if Kirk Cousins wins this game against the 49ers, I'll pick him next week. I'll pick the Vikings. For all you Vikings fans, I'll do it. But I'm not quite there yet. Next, and the final game are the Seahawks versus the Packers. This is a tough game to pick because the Seahawks looked really good last week, and the Packers are kind of trash. like the Packers, Aaron Rodgers is great. The defense is great, but they're really inconsistent too. Again, almost lose to the Lions. I'm gonna go Seahawks here. Last week I'm gonna go with the Seahawks. They looked good last week. DK Metcalf looked dominant, and the team looks like they're ready to really compete. So I'm gonna have our conference finals set up. I'm gonna have the Texans versus Ravens, and on the other side, the Seahawks versus 49ers. So we made our underdog pick with the Texans. Seahawks are also definitely underdogs. So I really did make two underdog picks this week, but last week was terrible, so I'm trying to switch up how I'm picking this because it did not work out last week because the playoffs are different. It's a different ball game than the regular season, and I think we saw that last week with my predictions. And so after this week, we are also going to do conference final predictions probably next week. But so that's my divisional round playoffs. I like the picks. I don't think it's impossible. Hopefully we can do better than last week by getting at least one winner. So that is this segment. Next up on TR Sports, we're going to be looking at 3 MLB offseason moves. 2 of them might be Phillies moves. We'll see. But that's right here on TR Sports. Welcome back to TR Sports. And by the way, while trying to make the segment, I failed this intro 4 separate times. The first intro was a sneeze. The second intro, I messed up a ton of words, so I decided to redo it. The third intro, I forgot what my failures were. So those are the 3. And, there's one more. And the fourth was a voice crack. Really bad one, so I had to redo it too. So not a great start to this segment on my end, but I promise this will be a good segment on your end. We are going to be talking about 3 more MLB moves. We're going to talk about 2 Phillies moves and 1 move that a pitcher made. Let's see if you can guess that after we talk about this little Phillies mini segment, because we're going to combine the 2 moves and talk about them as one, the 2 Phillies moves. So let's get right into it. Steven Matz, Didi Gregorius, both go to the Phillies. 2 guys at the beginning of the offseason I really wanted the Phillies to go out and get, and they did their job, and they spend money once again, even though they decided not to spend after these 2 moves, but they get the guys that they wanted. Zach Wheeler's contract is very big, $118 million for 5 years. When I first saw this pop up on my notification screen, I was walking outside, and I look at my phone, and it says Steven Matz agrees $118 million deal with the Phillies. I'm not going to lie to you, I was upset. I didn't like the deal. I'm sure many Phillies fans see that number and don't like it. But the value that Steven Matz brings to this team is unbelievable. After further look, I really understood that Steven Matz, we need a pitcher. And Steven Matz not only has potential to be a bona fide ace in this league, he's got amazing fastball, he's got amazing pitching skills, but the Phillies really need a pitcher. So we get a great pitcher, even if he's not, Cy Young and, superstar. You still need a great or a good pitcher, and I'll tell you this, Zach Wheeler will be a great pitcher or a good pitcher. I think I said Steven Matz earlier. I meant Zach Wheeler, by the way. If I did say Steven Matz, I think I said Zach Wheeler or Steven Matz. But so Zach Wheeler is the guy for the Phillies. He's an amazing pitcher. He hasn't always looked it, especially with the Mets. Playing behind Noah Syndergaard and Jacob deGrom, but he's got a lot of potential, and that's what the Phillies were banking on. They couldn't get a guy like Garrett Cole, so they went out and got a young stud. Not young, he's about 29, but he's not super old. So they go out and get a stud like Zach Wheeler with a lot of potential. But I do believe, first 2 years, if Zach Wheeler doesn't fulfill that, there's not much more to him left because he's 29 years old. He's not that young, right? So he's got a lot left in him, I believe, but that is yet to be seen. Contract a little big, but you got to do what you got to do if you need pitching in the MLB. The other move that the Phillies made was Didi Gregorius on a 1-year deal from the Yankees. I don't have the value in front of me. I couldn't find it. I like this deal. Gregorius has had a rough past 2 seasons, but his best season was under manager Joe Girardi, who is currently the Phillies manager. So I like the move. The Phillies really need a hitting shortstop, and he can provide that. And let's hope, I really hope the Phillies make the playoffs. This might be the year. I thought it was going to be last year, but we'll see. It's yet to be seen. This Phillies team, I don't know what to think of yet. I really have to sit down and look at the lineup and analyze it. But I like the two moves that the Phillies needed to make, and another 2 of my favorite offseason moves. This next move is a really interesting move, one of the most interesting. It barely didn't make the cut for the segment we did last week, and I mean barely didn't make the cut. And that is Madison Bumgarner on a huge contract to the Diamondbacks. He's old, and it's a lot of money to give a player. They gave him a lot of a player who's in his 30s now. And he's not what he used to be in, 2015, for example, during that World Series. That was some of the greatest pitching I've ever seen. He's not that anymore, but he's still a great pitcher, and his name's Madison Bumgarner. That's good for marketing, and that's good for everything. And he's going to the Diamondbacks, who need pitching and need help and need to find their identity, similar to a team like the Texas Rangers that we'll talk about later in the interview. I like the Mad Bum move, sort of. Of course, you're getting a top player, but is he really worth that much money? Let's see if I can find his contract. I looked a while to find these deals, and they're difficult to find. Okay, here you go. Madison Bumgarner is on an $85 million contract, and that's over how many years is this deal? I'll find it in a second. But anyway, he's 30 years old, which is old. It's a lot to pay a guy like this. But he's making it's an $85 million deal, which is not as much as a guy like Zach Wheeler, but there's much less potential in Madison Bumgarner. And that's the thing. Will Madison Bumgarner get any better? I don't think he will. But the question is, can he stay where he is? Because if he played like he did at some points last season, this will be worth the deal. And the Diamondbacks need a guy like this, and they get their guy. This is probably who they're targeting all offseason. It's a decent move. Again, it's one of those moves where the Diamondbacks are in such a corner, just like the Phillies, with pitching, and they need help, and they get a guy who's a star, who's got star potential, and it might be a better deal than the Zach Wheeler deal. It's yet to be seen, but 3 really interesting moves this MLB offseason. A lot happened. Last year we had to wait till February to get the Bryce Harper and Manny Machado decisions. Next up on TR Sports, we are going to be talking about my failure to predict the wildcard games, and we'll just talk about the games, what I thought of each of them, and then after that, of course, we have our Texas Rangers Fanatics interview. So that's right here on TR Sports. Welcome back to TR Sports. It's time to talk about failures. A lot of analysts, a lot of people who do the stuff that I do, like I'm doing right now, they get stuff wrong. A lot. I get stuff wrong a decent amount. I want to say that I'm right most of the time, but everyone gets stuff wrong, and that's what happened last week. It was bad. So I picked my wild card winners, and every team that I picked lost. But it happens to the best of us. I tried to be adventurous with my picks this week, hoping that really doesn't happen again. But the picks I picked, a lot of the games were really close. You had the Saints and Vikings. Vikings barely beat out the Saints. The Saints should have won that game. Barely beat out the Saints. Patriots barely beat out the Titans. Texans should have won the Bills should have won against the Texans, but blew it in overtime. And the only really not close game was the Eagles. But there's other reasons for that. So let's talk about each game last week. As you can see, I have the divisional playoff picks on the screen, and none of the teams I picked last week won. And that's why none of them are on that photo you see on screen. So let's talk about each game. So number one, we have the first game of the whole day, which was Texans versus Bills. Brutal game. Looked terrible. Both teams looked really bad. But in the end, the Texans come through in overtime. Josh Allen looked terrible. I really expected more from him. He exceeded my expectations his rookie season. This season, he was okay. I think he's got more left in the tank, and I think there's more to be seen. But I was disappointed about the way he went out this season. I expected a little more. Deshaun Watson looked great. The Texans team looked okay. The defense looked really good with J.J. Watt. And that's, I picked them to beat the Kansas City, which was one of my adventurous picks, as I said earlier. Not a great game playing-wise, but entertainment-wise, it was really great. There's some really weird plays, like Josh Allen decided to lateral it backwards and lose the ball, and some really poor decisions on both sides. So that was the first AFC wildcard game that I got wrong because I picked the Bills. Texans move on. Next is the Patriots-Titans game. Mike Vrabel, former pupil of Bill Belichick. It's like a Obi-Wan Anakin situation. You expect Obi-Wan, Bill Belichick, to beat Anakin, Mike Vrabel. That doesn't happen in this situation. Not like it does in The Revenge of the Sith, where the master beats the Padawan. The Padawan beats the master in this situation. You have the Titans out-coaching the Patriots, really. They outplayed them and they out-coached them. I don't want to hear the excuses receiver-wise and stuff like that because Tom Brady has had great receivers his whole career. Can he do something with bad receivers? Or not even bad. You have Julian Edelman. You don't have a bad receiving core. There's yet more to be seen from the Patriots. People don't know if Tom Brady is going to retire now. I don't think he's going to retire, but is he going to stay with the Patriots? It's to be seen. So Titans win that game. There's not much to talk about game-wise because it was a very boring game, especially after that Texans-Bills game. It was close, but it was really boring. The highlight of the game was Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick going back and forth on trying to get more yards on punt yards. So they wanted the kicker to go farther back, and they were both playing a penalty game. They were playing a game of chess with penalties, which is very interesting to see when you're watching the game. But you want the best moment to be not a coaching moment, but a on-field moment. After that, we have the NFC and the NFC playoff game. The first one was the Vikings-Saints game. Another one that I got wrong. I picked the Saints to not only win this game, but to go to the Super Bowl. And that didn't happen. The Vikings outplayed the Saints. Drew Brees looked terrible. The Saints looked bad. The defense looked bad. The fans were angry. New Orleans complains after losing, like always. I don't like New Orleans, the team, and I decided to pick them for the Super Bowl. And that just it didn't happen. It was ugly. I watched some of the game. Drew Brees fumbles in the moment that he needs to lead his team down the field and win. He blows the game. And, there's all this Drew Brees hype about him being better than Peyton Manning. Why don't you prove it, dude? He doesn't prove it like that. He doesn't step up in big moments like this. He doesn't do it. And he's no Peyton Manning. He's no Tom Brady. He's no Joe Montana. He's Drew Brees. Guy who puts up good stats and has a good coach. That's him, and that's, I think, what he will be remembered for. I don't think he's going to have a championship in his future at this point. I just don't think he has that much left in him at this point. I think this was his last real chance, and I think he was going to get it. But once again, New Orleans Saints disappoint me and fail in some epic fashion. And then after that, we have another epic failure by the Eagles. They go into this game all hyped. We're all hyped. I'm hyped. I think the Eagles have a chance to win. Carson Wentz goes down with a head injury from a hit on Jadeveon Clowney hit Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz goes out for the game. A lot of people talking about a dirty hit, blah, blah, blah. I mean, what do I think? Do I think the Jadeveon Clowney was a dirty hit on Carson Wentz? Sort of. I think the hit was more reckless and more thoughtless than anything else. I thought, it shouldn't have happened. I'm not going to give him a pass. I think it was a reckless hit. Was it intentionally dirty? I don't think so. It might have been, but I don't really think. I think it was just a reckless tackle that came out really bad. So Carson Wentz goes out with a concussion. The Eagles put in the 40-year-old quarterback backup who was retired like 6 months ago. They bring him out, and shockingly, he doesn't do that well. He doesn't do badly, actually. Who doesn't love Josh McCown in the league at this point? He comes in, he's doing well, driving the team down the field. But of course, the Eagles, there's not, the receivers are bad at this point. Not bad, but there's just not a lot to work with. And Josh McCown's an old man, like he's never played in a playoff game. He's 40 years old and he's playing in a playoff game now. He did play with a torn hamstring, which really makes what he did actually incredible, by the way. If you're 40 years old and you're in a playoff game and you did what Josh McCown did with a torn hamstring, it was off the bone, and he did this. So admirable what he did. Great game by Josh McCown. Really tried to save the Eagles season, but at the end it wasn't meant to be. DK Metcalf on the Seahawks had a crazy game. Russell Wilson played okay, and that was the only highlight of that game. It was also not a boring game, but it just wasn't necessarily exciting. You wanted to see more action. I believe the Eagles would have won that game if they had Carson Wentz, but that was robbed from them by Jadeveon Clowney, and it shouldn't have happened. I'm kind of upset about it, but I've had a week for it to set in, and that stuff happens sometimes. So all of my picks are wrong on Wildcard. Let's hope we get at least one in this divisional round, and I believe I will, unless some epic upsets happen. I believe I'm at least gonna get one. So that is the Wildcard playoffs from last week. I made mistakes picking, but I'm sticking by what I said for many of the teams. They're all close games, and it happens sometimes, So that is the NFL playoffs. Next week, we'll talk about the conference finals. But next up, we have a great interview with David from Texas Rangers Fanatics. It was awesome having him on the show. Great guy, and that is next up on TR Sports. Welcome back to TR Sports. I'm really excited for this next segment because we are talking with another fan page. This is a really fun series that I've been doing. Of course, you guys got the interview last week, and we got another one this week, and it's with one of my most interesting teams in baseball, the Texas Rangers. So we got Texas Rangers Fanatics here, David, and big fan page. So welcome, David.
Thanks. Pleasure to be here.
So, Texas Rangers, really interesting team. So I'm first going to talk to you about your fan page. So when you started your fan page, how long ago was that? And did you ever expect it to last this long or grow as big as it did?
So I started my fan page on June 25th, 2015, I believe. And now I definitely did not expect it to become a page with 10,000 followers, and I didn't think I'd still be doing it in 2020. So it's been a crazy experience so far.
And have you had a moment where, a baseball player liked a post of yours or something like that that really made you realize that this thing I'm doing here, it's really going somewhere?
I think one of the first times I really kind of grasped that was maybe back in 2016 or 17. I believe it was Delino DeShields had commented on one of my posts, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. And over the years, I've had a few players message me or comment like my photos and stuff, and that's just really when you realize you're reaching out to not only fans but people related to the team or seeing your posts.
And, running a fan page, it's a lot of work to post something every day, especially with the MLB where there's 100+ games. Have you ever had a moment where you wanted to quit or stopped or took a break or something like that?
Yeah, pretty much anything from 2017 to now. Jokes aside, though, there's been some rough seasons recently for the Rangers, as I'm sure you know.
The Rangers.
Yeah, I'm bringing into that.
It is. They are a strange team because they are a team that has gone out and gotten prospects that have a high ceiling but are high-risk players. And recently, the Rangers have not finished over 500 since 2016. And they made I think the most interesting move of the offseason, which is going out and getting Corey Kluber. They didn't really give up much, but do you think, first of all, was the deal for Corey Kluber a good one? And can he help you compete in this stacked AL West?
So, yeah, I definitely think that Corey Kluber deal was a very good one. Totally unexpected. I thought it was fake when I saw a tweet about it, but it was totally unexpected. Really good deal. I think they only gave up Delino DeShields and one other prospect, which is a steal for a former Cy Young winner and future Hall of Famer, in my opinion. And I do believe he can help the Rangers compete more in, like you said, a very stacked division. You got the Astros, who are a little spotty right now with the whole cheating stuff. You've got the Angels, who got Rendon and have been making some moves. The A's are always in it, at least the past couple years. And then you kind of have the Mariners, and who knows with them. But very stacked division, about 3 or 4 teams really competing each year for that first place spot.
And the question that I've asked myself, and that's really confused me about this Rangers team, is are they trying to compete? Because the Astros and the Athletics and teams like that, they're really good teams, and it seems like a move for Corey Kluber's, it's a good move. Yes, you're getting a nice, solid pitcher at this point. But what do you think they can do to really compete in this division? And do you think they're trying to win, or they might end up rebuilding?
Well, that's excuse me. Well, it's been the thing with John Daniels. He is very mysterious in what he does, not very vocal about who he's looking at, what trades he does, which is why something like getting Corey Kluber was so mysterious to everyone, because that was not in any discussions people had heard. I do believe they're trying to compete, though, but they are not done getting more players this offseason. In my opinion, the team still needs a catcher, needs a good third baseman, because right now it's just Nick Solak or Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. And then maybe, another outfield piece. I heard Marcell Ozuna kind of being talked about. But they need a few more pieces to go over the top. But I do believe they're making an active effort to compete.
And it is weird because if you think back to last trade deadline, they're trying to get rid of Mike Minor to a lot of people's accounts. Can Mike Minor do what he did again this season?
I think he really can. And the reason I say that is the Rangers have finally let him loose. The first year or so he was with the team, they kind of had that innings limit on him because he hadn't started in a few years. But last year they just let him loose completely, and he was one of the best pitchers in the American League and in all of baseball. Had 200 strikeouts. It was an all-star game. He just let loose and showed that he still has what it takes to lead a rotation and be a starter.
You guys struck out on Rendon this offseason. You guys were pretty much my pick to get Rendon. Now that he's off the market, do you think the Rangers can trade a guy in their farm system, maybe someone like Sam Huff, for Arenado or Chris Bryant or someone like that at third base?
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about that over the past few weeks. And I don't really know, to be honest with you. Like you said, missing out on Rendon was pretty big, but given how much LA paid for him, I'm pretty okay with that. That's not worth it. I think they got the right prospects, but it's just a matter of, do they really want the few years of Arenado? Because I do believe he can opt out after 2022. So they would have to try to extend when he could opt out if they were to spend all those prospects on top of paying him this $250 million contract.
The Rangers last season finished under 500. Were you expecting better than that last season?
To be honest with you, no. They had a pretty bad 2017 and 2018, so I didn't know what to expect for 2019. But they did show that they had what it takes even with the limited roster, and I didn't think they were going to get more than 70 wins, to be honest with you. So showing that they almost got to 500 without them getting really any big impact players gave me a little bit of hope for the 2020 season. And the new ballpark as well.
Yeah, and with the new ballpark and the almost new electricity around the Rangers going forward, will this season be the season that they finally come through with Corey Kluber and finish over 500 or even make a playoffs?
It's tough to say at the moment. Once they maybe go after a few more players, we'll have a better idea. But that's the crazy thing about baseball. You can look good on paper and still not win a World Series. Yankees, cough, cough. But you got to have just the stars align pretty much on top of your great players and all the stats and sabermetrics that go into the sport nowadays.
Yeah, and speaking of stats and home runs, Joey Gallo, do you see him as a main piece moving forward if the Rangers are going to try to make a run at the World Series in the next however many years?
Oh, yeah. I think they need to hang on to him because he's shown, even with his injury last year, that he has all-star capabilities and 50-plus home run power. Now, the problem with him that a lot of people see is they're thinking if we extend him, he'll have a Rougned Odor type thing where he just falls off the map completely. But I don't think that will be the case because Joey already got through his criticism with hitting around 200 in his first few years, but still showing the pop. And last year, he reduced his strikeouts significantly. So he was looking really good before that injury.
Yeah, and you guys, the difficult thing and interesting thing about the Rangers to me is they're at a point where they're torn between building their farm system and building their team. If you got to be able to control the Rangers, would you think you would try to stack that farm system even more? You guys have the 14th ranked farm system, and you have 3 top 100 prospects, and the MLB team is on the line of 500. So would you go more of the traditional rebuilding route through the draft, or are you going to try to spend money in free agency and compete that way?
I think personally, given how last year went, I would go for the gold. I would try to push to at least make the playoffs and show the fans that, the team still is trying. Because a lot of people do overreact. I mean, the Rangers were in the playoffs 3 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. You got teams like the Mariners who haven't even been anywhere since 2001. So the Rangers are still a good team, but they have just never been able to get it done. So if I were John Daniels, I would just make the full push to try to win now.
Yeah, and, they've been, again, torn between competing and not competing. They got rid of Cole Hamels. They almost got rid of Mike Minor. But this offseason, I feel like they've done a good job. But what would you grade the Rangers offseason so far?
Honestly, right now it's probably at about a B- or C+. The only thing that's really given them the boost is the Kluber trade,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
it's their big move.
But they haven't done a bad job. It's just they still have some work to do, like I was talking about earlier. They do have a problem at catcher because right now it would just be Jeff Mathis.
Mm-hmm.
And at third base, they do have some work to do, plus another outfield piece to maybe give Chu some days off since he's aging a little bit now. Yep. But they still have work to do. They haven't done a bad job, though. So I'd probably say about a B-.
Yeah, so for the Rangers, competing in this AL West, do they need more pitching? Do you think that a Mike Minor combo with Corey Kluber, do you think that's really good enough to compete with a team like the Astros? And do you think the Astros or a team like that in your division what team do you think will be the biggest issue coming up for this next season?
I think the biggest team to beat will still be the Astros. The Angels are sneaking up there a little bit, although they have miles to go on pitching. But depending on how the Astros get punished, which I don't think it will really be anything that severe, that will really impact the entire division. And they did lose Garrett Cole as well to the Yankees. So that will have a good rippling effect on the playoffs. Yeah. But I do think with Mike Minor, Lance Lynn, Corey Kluber, they can all come together and have that powerful 1, 2, 3 in the division and in other parts of the AL.
Yeah, and last season, not only did Mike Minor pitch well, but as you said, Lance Lynn. Do you think he will also step up this coming season and be as good as he was last year?
I really do. And that's just because he's been solid throughout his whole career. Of course, he's had a few bad years sprinkled in, but I believe his career ERA is only about a 3.4, which is pretty solid for a second or third starter. And he's just a workhorse. I mean, he got, I think, close to 200 innings last year. But you can't ask for much more than that. He went out 7, 8 innings every night, just dealing and getting the job done.
We talked about Bryant, Arenado, Rendon. Is there anybody that you want the Rangers to go out and get going forward?
Yeah, I really want them to try to get Nick Castellanos because he's a pretty versatile player. You could put him at first to platoon with Guzman. You could put him at third to take over that spot. And then I'm not sure who's left on the catcher market. I think Chirinos is available. I would really like them to have a reunion with Chirinos. Since he was great for us, I have no idea why they let him go to Houston. But he was great for us.
It's about 40 days away from the start of spring training, and I plan to interview more fan pages too. So I want to do a thing where I'm going to ask you, who do you think will win the World Series this upcoming MLB season?
Man, that's a tough question right now. But to be honest with you, I think the Nationals have a chance to repeat.
The Nationals. And do you think that a team like the A's can take that next step going into next year? Or do you think the rest of your division is going to become stagnant?
It's tough to say right now as well. But the thing about teams like the A's, they need to be willing to spend, which that's where I give credit to the Angels because they did drop, $300 million on Rendon, $400 million on Trout, although they could use their money a little more better. But teams need to be willing to spend or at least trade players in order to take that next step. And Moneyball teams like the A's don't exactly have the capital or the will to do that.
Thank you for coming on TR Sports, David. That is going to conclude today's episode of TR Sports. Hopefully you guys are enjoying Season 2 so far, and hopefully, David, your fans are going to enjoy this interview too. So thank you guys for watching TR Sports so much. We'll be back at it next week. Good week in sports, good podcast, and I will see you all later.